clustering to achieve the highest strengths.
All right, you're saying then that to get a certain level of ELO, you would have to have a corresponding price. Do you have information on how many levels you will have and what those prices would be on a per hour basis?
Yeah, well, that's, first of all, let me just say that this is preliminary. I haven't, obviously this is not official. I'm still kind of, some issues will surface that will adjust these things. But in general, let's start, the version I've been focusing on the most is what I call the starter. Let's call it the starter. It might have a different name later. Which is the weakest online version you can rent. This version needs to have two properties. It needs to be very cheap, because most people are cheap and don't want to pay really much money. And second, it needs to be stronger than what most people can do at home using some kind of a normal solution, because otherwise nobody will rent it. So the price range I'm looking for that is you can either rent it for an entire year around the clock, and that's, again, preliminaries, that's going to be 750 euros. That means you have an account, you can log in whenever you want, and you can use it however long you want. You can share your account with your friends. Or you can pay by the hour, and the rough rate for that I have my mind on for that is 50 cents per hour. 50, by cents I mean 50, half a euro per hour. And this version needs to be clearly stronger than, you know, Rybka 4 running on a quad, or people won't use it.
How many levels of strength do you foresee having?
Yeah, well, that's actually, I haven't decided, but there's 4 natural levels that I'm probably going to have. So there will be, you know, 4 levels with higher prices.
There's going to be a basic level, and then there's going to be 3 levels above that. At the top level, what would you be getting?
At the top level, you will be getting something which is really, 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 really strong. Now, it's going to use a cluster. You don't have to know that, but it will, because that's how we get that kind of strength. It'll probably be a little bit weaker than Lukasz's cluster because, well, for various reasons, but it'll be close to the strength of Lukasz's cluster. And the price for that, I don't actually know what the price is going to be yet, because I don't know what kind of premium I'm going to charge for the fact that it's the strongest. But we're looking at something like 80 to 100 euros per hour. But let me just say, that's the strongest one. You know, there's if that's a little bit pricey for you, then we have other choices. You know.
Let's do the math on this, Vaz. You can buy a pretty good 8-core server for between $4,000 and $5,000 nowadays, and they depreciate pretty fast. Probably 3 years, maybe 4 years. Let's say it loses about $1,000 of value each year, and at the end of 4 years it's worthless, essentially. How does your offering compare to that?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say, there's still some details for me to work out, so I don't want to say that for sure for this price you can get that. But roughly speaking, this should be roughly comparable. That 8-core server that you buy now should be roughly comparable to the starter version. That's at least, that would be, let's say, a successful scenario for me. And then it'll cost you 750 euros to rent it for 1 year, which will give you better value than if you buy it. Because even if an 8-core server will last you for 4 years, you lose more than 1/4 of that during that first year. You know, it's going to be cheaper to rent.
If your Rybka 4 buyers get a fixed product, right, a disc, right, with annual or maybe biannual updates, and then remote Rybka buyers get the latest and greatest Rybka version, that will open up a widening strength gap between the Rybka 4 users and the remote Rybka users, right? How big might that gap become?
Well, the gap will grow over time, but keep in mind that I control the strength of these different versions. I set the strength of the starter version based on what kind of hardware I use to provide it. So, you know, once once private Rybka becomes stronger and stronger, what I'll do is I'll provide weaker, cheaper versions.
Let's go back to the starter version. So, what kind of a commitment would a person have to make in order to get in on this latest and greatest Rybka?
Well, there's going to be two different ways to rent it. One way is going to be the long-term approach, where you reserve a year, let's say, of just either around the clock 24/7 time or many hours, and then it will be, you'll have a lower rate, of course. Like I mentioned, 750 euros for 1 year. Or a person can just go log into Play Chess or to connect a server and just use it for an hour, and that's going to cost preliminarily 50 cents per hour.
Okay, but here's my question. So a person could, in theory, have access to the latest version of Rybka between releases, and if they wanted to sample it for 1 hour, they'd only have to come up with €0.5. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Given this transaction, why would someone want to buy a regular Rybka 4 release?
Well, it's up to the users, of course, what they want to do. If they don't want to connect to the internet, or if they want to, it's their business. If it was me, I wouldn't buy Rybka 4. I would just use the online version. It has the best value, and that's perfectly fine with me as the provider. That's good for everybody. It's a win-win-win.
Okay. Let's move on to Rybka 4. It's expected to be released in 2010 sometime, is that right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Would you expect the release to be in the first quarter, the first half, or can you tell us?
I have some plans for this, but I've learned that plans change, and then people quote you on things you guessed at, and so I'd rather not give a date right now. I'm going to release Rybka 4 when the right time comes, when I've done enough to have a good release and when that fits into the big picture. So,
will it be an earthquake in computer chess or just a slight tremor? What's the headline here? Faster, better, stronger?
Rybka 4, the commercial release, will be a clear step forward. It won't be an earthquake on the scale of the previous releases, simply because the earthquake now is going to be the internet version. This is where I'm transitioning. This is the main focus now. This is the main service. This is the thing that will give the most value to people. And, in 2 years, you won't believe that you previously didn't have an internet version to use. But that's the big step forward now. Rybka 4, the commercial version, is more of a continuation. There's some users who are going to be uncomfortable with the internet model. There are some users who won't have access to the internet. And for these users, and also for publicity, we're going to have, a commercial Rybka 4, and it'll be a good product.
What about people who would like Rybka 4 on their hard drive, on their existing hardware, and people who want also the internet version? Would there be some sort of a discount or some sort of an advantage for them to take both packages?
I haven't gotten to that point of making that kind of decision yet. A lot of that will be up to ChessBase and Convecta, so I'm not really sure. But of course, you can buy both.
So what's your current plan for releasing Remote Rybka? When are we going to actually see a price schedule, and how is it going to roll out?
The date that I have in mind is very early 2010. This is kind of what I have my eyes set on. I don't want to promise this, but this is the plan right now. Let me also say that we are going to do what's called a soft launch. This is something which is normal for these kinds of services. These kind of services exist in every sector. You can't just go online with all kinds of computers and let people start using it right away. They're going to overload the system. They're going to find all kinds of new weird problems, and you won't be able to meet